Hello and welcome to another episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
And I'm Gini Dietrich.
And today we're going to be talking about ambition and goals and what we want to accomplish with this podcast or something.
So, sure, we can do that.
Sure. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right after this. I'm actually not feeling all that ambitious today, so maybe we shouldn't focus on the ambition for this show. Maybe we should focus on some other kind of ambition.
I agree, because I am also not feeling very ambitious today.
I'm feeling like this is a box we need to check, but we're still going to put on a good show for you because all of you in agency land know that this happens from time to time, that sometimes you don't feel super motivated to get a job done, but you have to do it anyway. And so that's where we are. Because it's 2022, the 2020s, over and over again.
Again and again and again.
Yes.
And again.
But I'm sure since we record in advance, by the time people hear this, everything will be magically better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's no subvariant of Omicron or COVID going on. Or
all good news. All good news.
Yeah.
All right.
No snow pounding the East Coast or anything like that.
Yes, blizzards. Fun times. Yes, we like those. All right. Well, no. So what we're actually going to talk about is ambition, because regular listeners may know that I use something called the AIM-GET framework with clients, and the A is for ambition, because the first thing that I always want to understand from a client is what they're trying to achieve. And I think too many small business owners generally, but particularly agency owners, don't really think about what they're trying to get from the business and instead let the business run them.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about this a bit in general, but I think everybody does that. Like, I went into business thinking I was going to build this great big global firm that was going to compete with the Fleischmann Hillards of the world. And as I started to grow it, I realized that is not at all what I wanted to do. And I was in business for myself for the wrong reasons.
Right. Well, and I think there is a tendency to think about your business goals. And so a lot of folks will come to me and say, I want to have this kind of revenue. I want to have this number of employees, or I don't want to have more than this number of employees, or any of those kinds of things. We've talked about a lot of those topics before, but it really all comes back to that root cause of understanding what you want from it, because only then can you really make smart business decisions that are helping to advance your own goals. If you want someone else to make the decisions for you, you can go get a job somewhere else. Presumably, you're an entrepreneur, you're running your own business because you want to have some degree of control.
Right. And I always say, people will say, well, why did you go out on your own? And the reason has changed in the last 15 years. But I love that I can control my own destiny. If it's a client I don't want to take, I don't take it. If it's a meeting I don't want to participate in, I don't participate. Like, I can control that destiny. And I mean, truth be told, if I want to make some more money, or we're going to make a big purchase for the house or something like that, I can make more money. I don't have to go ask for a bonus or a raise or, work a second job. I mean, I might be working a second job from the number of hours I'm working, but I can make more money, and I am in control of that. And I love that part of owning my own business.
Yeah. And for each owner, it's going to be something different, right? So for some people, it is the financial. For some people, it's the flexibility of the work you do. For some, it's the flexibility of what you can do with your free time and when your free time lands, because you have clients, and clients control that, quote unquote, to some degree, but you also have some degree of control over it yourself. And so, understanding what it is that's driving you allows you to be much more satisfied. And I think that if you hate your business and you just say, I'm just trying to do the best I can because I need to make the money and I want to be able to retire someday, that's not a good enough reason. You need to have some satisfaction out of what you're doing if you're going to be successful at it and not resent it and not wish you just had a regular full-time job somewhere.
Well, and I believe that if you aren't happy in your business and you're not satisfied with the work that you're doing, you're not going to make any money anyway. So it doesn't, I mean,
I guess I'd push back on that a little bit. I've seen some pretty miserable agency owners who actually make decent money.
Really?
Yeah.
I am not that way. If I were miserable, I would not make money.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that, they usually still think they should be making more,
of course.
Or, more often they're upset about the number of hours they're working. Right. So they're they're making good money, but they're, working 100 hours a week and, feel like they're making no progress. But you have to decide what it is. And I love that you said it changes, or it's changed for you over time, because it does change, right? Where you are in your life, where you are with your business changes what you want to get out of it. So, while I think you do need to sit down, either ideally before you start the business or at some point along the way, and say, okay, this is what my ambition is, and this is how the business will help me fulfill it. You need to review that periodically to see how it's changing. For a lot of people, the last 2 years has changed some of the things that
Absolutely.
that they value.
I review it annually. I sit down with myself, myself, and I. And I do have those honest conversations with myself. And I think about things like, what do I want to accomplish this year? What do I want the business to accomplish this year? Are we doing the kinds of work that I want us to be doing? What can we add in? Where do I need to bring in talent for certain things? I do that every year, and really analyze if the business is where I want it to be. And if not, what we need to do in the coming 12 months to be able to get it there.
Right. And we've talked about the importance of your own role as the agency owner. And so if you don't understand what you're trying to get out of it, you can't then design your role so that you're both happy with it and you're producing the best results possible for the business. So they really are completely intertwined. And so you need to spend some quality time thinking about it. I love that you do it annually. That's what I recommend generally for people, either annually or if some significant life event comes along.
The pandemic. Kids,
pandemic, kids,
divorce,
something. So
yep.
There's some triggering event.
Yep.
Then it's time for you to just step back, take a deep breath, have the conversation with yourself, have it with friends or family or whomever, so that you can try to think through where you're headed, and then you can make those steps. You can figure out what the steps are along the way to get there.
It's funny you say that, because I remember, in March and April of 2020, everybody was sort of like, okay, what's going to happen and what do we do? And should we, are we going to have to move things around? And there was that 2-week period as the last week of March and the first week of April that I kept having these conversations with clients. And some clients were fine. They were like, yeah, we're going to we can expand our online services and you can help us with that. And some clients, we had one client that we had forever that was in manufacturing. And he was like, I can't even have people working because we're in a lockdown. But I remember having these conversations, and there was one client I had not talked to yet. And he called me that first week of April, and I picked up the phone and I said, I don't want to have this conversation, do I? And he goes, nope. I was like, okay. But it really, I think because I had experienced the Great Recession and was not prepared for that, I was better prepared for the pandemic and for what that meant for the business, and was able to adjust pretty quickly because of it. But had I not gone through the Great Recession, I don't think I would have been as ready as I had been.
Right. And that's, we should always be learning, right? You should, whether it's in business or in life, the experiences that you have should inform your future ones. You obviously want to be careful that they don't make you, gun shy, that all of a sudden you start living in your little bubble because you don't want to run any of the risks of things going wrong that you've seen go wrong in the past. But if you learn from those mistakes, you will have an opportunity to build that better path forward.
Yeah, I think it's really important I love the ambition. I love the framework. I love the idea of even if it's just, thinking about once a year what you want the business to look like, but really understanding how things that are happening globally will affect that. Like with the pandemic, my husband came home in December, and I remember this. He said, I think something's happening here and we should pay attention. And I remember going, come on, like, really? And he was like, no, I really think something's going on here. And he's like, just kind of stock up on a few things just in case. And so I did. But because he was paying attention globally, and he looks at that stuff through a different lens because he's in politics than I do. But because of that, I started to look at the team, and I started to look at the book of business that we had. And I knew which clients were not going to be able to sustain a PR firm, an external PR firm. I knew that in January, right? So just being able to understand your ambition, what your goals are, but also how global events are going to affect that. The stock market changes, all of that stuff affects the work that we do.
Right. And I think there are some key core things that you need to be thinking about. And we've touched on some of them. The first is, how much do you want to make, right?
Yep.
If you're not thinking through how much you want to earn, that's a mistake. A lot of folks just say, I'll make as much as I can. Okay, cool. That sounds nice, but you really need to figure out what's the minimum. What do you need to make
Right.
in order to make this worthwhile? In fact, I get asked pretty regularly by folks who are thinking about going out on their own, what should my hourly rate be? Well, first you need to figure out how much you need to make, and then you need to figure out how many hours you can work, and now you know the minimum, right? Then you can
Right.
from there you can figure out other things. But if you need to make $100,000 a year and you can work 30 hours a week on actual client work, not other stuff, okay, now just do the math, and you can figure out what that minimum amount on an hourly basis you need to be earning. Now, whether you charge on the hourly, we had that conversation. We're not going to do that today.
Yeah. But it gives you a good
but you
base.
need to understand how much you need to make and how much you want to make. Right. So that's if you understand what you need to survive, you know what you can't go below, which helps inform your business decisions. And if you know what you want to make, again, that helps inform those decisions. So focus on that as a piece of your ambition, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah. I think the way that you position this, both on this podcast and with your clients, is really smart. And it is, if something happens to you, or you decide that you want to go live on an island and you want somebody to run the business, what are you going to have to pay that person to take over your job? And that's the best place to start. I say to clients all the time, if you were to go get a job in a corporation, what would they pay you? And usually it's, $250,000 to $500,000 or more. And I'm like, okay, how much are you paying yourself? 60 grand. What?
Right.
No.
Yes,
When
please
your
don't do
junior
that.
level employees are making more money than you are, problem.
Right. But that's because most of those folks haven't gone through this process correctly, and they're taking what the business can give rather than telling the business what they need to get.
Yep.
And it really, you are the owner. You need to drive this process. And if you've got multiple partners, you need to each have this idea of your ambition, and then you need to figure out where's the overlap, right? Because if you've got one partner who's like, I'm fine making 60,000, another one's like, well, if I make anything less than 180, my spouse is going to kill me. You need to reconcile those things, because they will lead to very different decisions about how you manage the business, how you focus on investments and profitability and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think setting aside the money that you need to make at a minimum is really smart. And then building the business around that is, I wish I had done that in the beginning, because there were years I didn't make anything. And because I was paying it to employees, which was dumb. That was dumb.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And it is, unfortunately, it's less often that happens in the early stages. More often it happens when there's a dip in the business, that the owner says, well, I don't want to let anyone go. I don't want anyone else to have to take a haircut. So I'm going to take it on myself. Right. Yep. And a lot of times it's because they blame themselves for the condition. And maybe it is their fault. Maybe not. Maybe it's external. It's probably partially their fault for whatever reason, but it doesn't matter. You still need to take care of yourself. You own the business. There is no excuse for not taking care of yourself. And I know that sounds selfish, but it is so important, because if you are unhappy, if you don't do what needs to be done to take care of yourself, the business is going to die anyway, and your employees are going to lose their jobs anyway.
Yep. Yeah. It sucks to let people go badly, but sometimes you have to do what's best for you. And
it sucks to lay people off. It's great to fire them for cause.
I don't like to fire people either, but that's why I outsource that to you.
You keep saying it, but I still haven't had a chance.
I haven't had to fire anyone. It's great. I have a great team. It's amazing.
Fine. Great team. Congratulations, all you spin sucks people. But it isn't just about money. It's also about the amount of time that you're working. And this is probably even more so than financial. The biggest complaint I get from clients is, I'm working too much. I feel like I don't ever get to take a break. I can't take time off. I'm working 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And so part of your definition of ambition has to be, how much time do you want to work? When do you want those hours to fall? Do you want them to be just Monday through Friday? Okay, well, that leads to some business decisions. You probably don't want to be in web hosting or crisis comms, where Saturday and Sunday are fair game.
Yep.
You can't just
Or
tell a client,
community
I'm sorry,
management or
you cannot have a problem on a weekend. I mean, or you need to really be staffed up so that you don't personally have to be involved, right? But those are, again, it's understanding what your rules are, what your targets are, and then making your business decisions based on that so that you can fulfill that ambition.
You just reminded me of a story. We had a client pass away on Thanksgiving. and he was famous, so we had to go through the whole rigmarole. And we knew it was coming. He was very sick, but it literally happened on Thanksgiving Day. So I'll never forget. I'm sitting on the couch in the living room. There's a turkey in the oven. Like, I have family everywhere, and I'm like talking to the New York Times about this. Like, sorry, it just happened on Thanksgiving Day. Nothing I can do about it. Like, I wish that it had been the day before or the following week, but yeah, you have to decide if that's the kind of work that you're going to do or not. And if you are, you have to be prepared for a death on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, I think the only day that I can remember of the year that I've never had a business call would be Christmas. I can't ever recall one. Christmas Eve,
I
for
can't recall
sure,
one
even
on
late
Christmas Day.
Christmas Eve, but I can't recall ever in my 30 years but every other, I mean, Thanksgiving, New Year's, all those others I certainly have had
Yeah,
business
I don't
calls
think
for
I
on
have on
these
Christmas
regularly.
Day either, but all the others I have for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that also means, you need to understand, how important are those things to you? Define them. How important is flexibility? How important is the work that you're doing? Right? Is it, for me, one of the reasons why I love running my own business is because I get to try a lot of new things, learn a lot of new things, and I have the flexibility to see an opportunity and go after it in a way that you can't as an employee. Maybe that's not you. Maybe you like to stay in your lane and that's what you want to do. Okay, that's fine. You need to understand that because those, again, will lead to very different business decisions. But you should be making them and not saying, well, what's the opportunity for the agency? Where should the agency be going? If you don't know what you want personally first, because you can very quickly end up with a business that is on paper successful, but makes you miserable.
Yeah. I've mentioned before that I'm running the marketing department for a client and my own agency, and I'm exhausted. I definitely had more ambition last summer than I do now when I took this on. But I will say that one of the things that I did early on, and I'm so glad I did, is I said I put certain things off limit. Like, I don't do meetings before 10 a.m. their time. They're on the East Coast, so 9 o'clock my time. I don't do meetings past 3 o'clock their time, which is 2 o'clock my time, because I want to be able to do school pickup and not have to worry about, trying to manage meetings and Zooms and all that while I'm in the car or after when she's home. I don't want to deal with that. So I have set pretty strict parameters in place. I will say, however, that they very much take advantage from between the 9 to 2 period. In some cases, I have 15-minute after 15-minute after 15-minute after 15-minute meetings. But I will say that's one thing I did that was really smart in the beginning, is I just set those expectations that does not happen. In fact, they asked if I could do a call tonight, and I was like, nope.
Right.
It's after 3 o'clock, not happening.
Yeah. And look, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, when you sit down and you define your ambition, you're not necessarily going to be able to get there immediately, whether you're just starting your agency or whether you're trying to course correct.
Right.
But you need to know where you're headed, because then what I'll do is I'll say to you, okay, well, this is what you want. What needs to change for you to get there? And so, because then you can start working through, okay, well, I'd like to go from 70 hours a week to 50 hours a week of work. Okay, great. Well, let's take a look at how you're spending those 70 hours. What can we move to someone else? What just doesn't need to be done at all? What can be done more efficiently? How can we rearrange things over time to get you there? Because that's not going to be an overnight thing. It's not like you can say, starting in March, I'm going to be working 30% less. Odds are that's not going to turn out too well.
Right.
I mean, maybe you'll get lucky. I mean, it probably means you have a lot of fat in your day if you're able to just, snap your fingers and wipe out, 30% of it. But if you know where you want to go, then you can start taking those manageable steps. And so, it's relieving 2 hours here, 3 hours there, and all of a sudden, it starts to add up, and you get to where you want to be eventually because you knew that's where you wanted to go. And if you don't get really specific about it, then you'll be in a situation where you just say, I want to work less. Okay, Well, what can I do? Well, I can hire someone else. Why? What are they going to do? A lot of times I see people go out and try to hire someone thinking it's going to relieve their burden. And in fact, it doesn't, because they picked them to do the wrong stuff.
Right.
And you've really got to figure out what can come off your plate and make the biggest difference in your day.
It's like anything else, right? I mean, we all craft plans for clients. We all create project management plans to be able to get the work done. We break down every big strategic rock into smaller pieces so that it's manageable and not
Right.
overwhelming. It's the same thing. If
Right.
your big strategic rock is to work 20 hours less a week, you have to break that down into manageable chunks. How
Right.
are you going to do that so that by the end of the year, you're working 20 hours less a week?
Right. And it's, just as you do with a client and you say to them, why do you want a new website or an email marketing campaign or a press release? Because you want to understand what the business purpose is behind it so you can tailor your strategy for them. You need to do the same for your own agency business and say, why am I trying to accomplish this? And that's really why, if you are the owner, if you are the partner in the business, you need to understand that for yourself. And one of the things I've got on my website is a list of questions where I suggest how you can start to think about it. It's not an be all end all list, but it's a good starting point to think through the things that you might want to include in your definition of ambition.
So we talked about the first one, which is how much do you want to make? How much do you want to work? So we talked about that. How do you feel about risk, which is a good one?
Risk is a huge one. You really need to think about that, because you can structure your business in a couple of different ways as far as tailored to your preferred risk level, I guess is how I'd put it.
For sure. Yeah. What type of work do you want to do? We talked about that. How important is flexibility to you? Who do you want to work with?
The who is big, because this is not just, who you want to surround yourself with, because it is partially that, right? The team that you want to work with, the kinds of folks that you want to work with, but it's also the kinds of clients that you want to work with. I mean, I work with plenty of agencies who say, I want to work for clients who are making a difference, or I don't want to work with clients who are in this sector or that sector. And that's all fine. Know that in advance so that you can, structure an offering and structure your ideal client definition to include or exclude whoever you want.
And this next question I love: where do you want to live?
Yeah, and I think that's what I didn't really have pre-pandemic, but now so many people are giving renewed thought to it that I think it's a specific one that's worth considering. And again, this is one of those ones that can change over time. And I've been working with a lot of agency owners over the last couple of years who've decided to move to entirely different locations because that's, what was going on around them just motivated them to say, what, I'm sick of living here. I want to live there. Great. And your business can support you in that as long as you know what you're trying to do. And again, it helps inform those decisions, because if I want to live in Alaska, I probably don't want to be doing a lot of work that is time sensitive to the East Coast, or I'm going to be working some really strange hours.
Or to Europe, for that matter. I mean,
or
it's
to
pretty
Europe,
easy.
right?
It's pretty easy to work with Europe right now, but if you go another 2 hours behind or 3 hours behind, that's pretty rough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've tried working with some agencies in Australia. It's a real challenge.
That's a real challenge.
Because one of us is going to be dramatically inconvenienced by the call schedule. It's impossible to talk to someone in Australia from the East Coast of the United States without someone being up at an obscene early hour or obscene late hour.
Yeah, that's true. How much do you want to travel?
Yeah. Another one, because that's really related to flexibility, but it's also related to the time zone question and, and a lot of other things. And if you want to build a business around travel, then that's something to think about too, because, maybe you want to go meet with clients in a lot of different places. And so you can craft an agency that allows you to travel for business and still see a lot of the world.
When I started my business, I did that. I found clients in very great locations where I like to ski. So I had clients in Deer Valley. I had clients in Montana. I had clients in Colorado. It was great.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and that's fine, right? I mean, if that's what you want from the business, then you can start targeting clients in those areas.
Yep.
And it allows you to mix what you're personally trying to achieve with what the business is trying to achieve. And to me, that's really what this is all about. There's no point in taking, on all of the risk of entrepreneurship if you're not getting what you want from it.
Yeah, I think you should drop a link to these questions in the show notes, because there's several others, and it's a really good list, but it really helps you start to think about it. And it may not be, to your point, it won't happen tomorrow. It may be a 3 to 5 year plan. But if you start thinking about that now and start thinking about how you can chunk it down into manageable to-dos to be able to get it done, then that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah, and you can start seeing the progress, and I think that's so important, because a lot of times people want to make dramatic changes in their agency, and if you break it into manageable chunks, it's like a weight loss program, right? If you say I want to lose 100 pounds, you'll probably be disappointed. If you say I want to lose 10 pounds, that's achievable, and then you can kind of keep growing from there, or shrinking, I guess. So, anyway, the amount of time we have available is itself shrinking, so that's going to bring us to an end of this episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. But I hope that you've had a chance to think about your own ambition, and you'll spend some more time thinking about it and defining it for yourself, so that you can shape your business around what you actually want to get from it, rather than allowing your business to drive you crazy.
Amen.
With that, I'm Chip Griffin.
I'm Gini Dietrich.
And it depends.